Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you again for joining for April's webinar. Hoping everybody had a great Eid after Shahr Ramadan. As we normally start, I'd like to start from a reflection from the Quran. So this verse is from chapter 3. And I picked this verse to sometimes we forget about the importance of love in the relationship with God. So this verse says, "Kul in kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattubuni." Tell them or say, if you love God, then follow me. What will happen when you follow, and this is the messenger, Allah will love you, yuhibbukum Allah. So God will love you, wa yakfar lakum zunubakum. He will forgive your misdeeds. Wallahu ghafurur rahim, and God is of forgiving, bestowing of mercy. So it's this beautiful reflection on a loving relationship with God, and kind of we have narrations which say is religion anything other than love, for example, because sometimes we don't concentrate on this concept of Allah as Wadud, as being loving, the loving creator, for example. The verse then follows to say, if you're not sure what the follow me meant, it meant the messenger. So kul atiyullahu wa rasul, obey God and his messenger. Fa'in tawalla fa'in Allahu la yuhibbul kafirin. But if they themselves turn away, God does not love those who are kafirin. Kafirin here is people who know the truth and they deny it. So there's a difference between not loving people who are ignorant. So you might be that, oh, actually people are doing things which are ignorant, but people who know that it's wrong, but they still do it, that's where we can say, okay, that's where God decides, no, that's not where the love is, because even love has its conditions, it has its boundaries in a sense. So I wanted to start with these verses in terms of having a loving relationship with our Creator. For those of you who might be joining, as some of you joined, not quite sure what Strong Support is, what we do. So we offer free consultation. I actually do that. I take all the free consultations who come in. This is free 25 minutes, which you can have. You can go on the website, book that through Calendly. We get queries from all over the world. We're happy to support people. We have a number of support circles. We're just starting our spouses support circle, which we're very looking forward to introduce that, because a lot of you have come in to say, that's kind of sometimes overlooked. Actually, before we're joining, we're discussing about the parent circle, and I'm sure a few of you have joined who are in our parent circle. Sometimes when we started this work, we didn't realize that it was people around the person who's affected. So, when you start the work, you think, okay, I need to treat the individual. But when you look at the problem as a whole, you're like, oh, actually, there's so many people affected. There's the parents, there's the spouse, and so on. And the topic that we've considered today is great because it covers everyone to kind of understand, okay, this is a familial issue, this is a relational issue. We also offer on Fridays, we have one-to-one coaching. Other than that, there's also other counselors that we recommend and so on. And our webinars are free. They're on our YouTube channel. You can see all of our past webinars for free. You can catch them there. Actually, we had Richard on for Time, Touch, and Talk, which is a fantastic book and a webinar, which I highly recommend that you see. That's in our YouTube as well. So not that Richard needs an introduction, but I've got to give him. So Richard is a psychotherapist, educator, and author. He's traveled throughout. He's even traveled in the Middle East. His lovely work in Egypt, teaching about marital relations, communication skills, parenting skills, healing from sexual abuse, and really understanding the issues that we work with relation to sexual and gender identity. 30 years, a huge, kind of milestone. He's helped hundreds absolutely in therapy and thousands through training. There's actually, just before we were starting, we were talking about his training material, which he's developed for parents, and, so much work in his lifetime, which is dedicated for this, which is absolutely, I would say pioneering. I think pioneering would be the right word to use. He's trained over 6,000 physicians, psychologists, counselors, ministry leaders. He's the author of 5 books. He founded IHF in 1990 and is currently the president and co-founder of PATH, which is Positive Approaches to Healthy Sexuality. PATH is based in Washington. It offers counselor training programs, family healing sessions, consultations, resource materials, and speaking engagements. And he's well known to be lecturing. You can find so much of his material. In terms of the books, I always want to give a shout out. There's so much which is there, and it is really, really good. What I personally like about Richard's book is it's not written for a psychotherapist, or it's not written for, like someone where you need to have prerequisite knowledge of it. It's really written for anybody, to pick up. And all the books, they're very easy to pick up, even if you're like the person who only reads 1 or 2 chapters. If you're like that, the books are quite good. And there's a lot of practical work. We were just discussing, there's a lot of homework, there's a lot of practicalities. It's not just theory. So it is really, when you're buying something, you are, I remember kind of reading the first book, which is now called Being Gay, Nature, Nurture, Both, and the introduction being, this is decades of work, which I'm now putting in this book, and it really is the testament of years of work and experience. It's beautiful. And and the book that we are obviously discussing now, understanding our LGBTQ loved ones. If most of you who work with me in a circle or in a one-to-one, I'm sure I've recommended it at some point. What I really like about this book is, if you like, it summarizes all the other ones. Like it's so, like when sometimes people come to me and they're like, where do I start? Like, what do I do? Like, how do I start from here? And this book is really, really good. Like, it goes through the history of the movement, where it started, what the main things are, what we're seeing in celebrity culture in terms of how we need to change language which is more inclusive, which is more loving. It's really practical way of dealing with this. Now, I really like this book, and I'm not just saying this because Richard's here. I honestly like it, and I've asked Richard's permission for this, so I'm going to share why I like it. So one of the things, as you all know, one of the things that we say in strong support is that we don't believe in a sexual identity. So we say even the term heterosexual is an identity, so we don't take that. And he clarifies in this book, because a lot of you came up to me and say, Ali, what is this understanding LGBTQ loved ones? What are you doing? Are you promoting this? What are you doing, right? So, so here he says he uses the term gay, and it's a social political term of someone who has SSA and decides to live a homosexual life. So this term LGBTQ is a social political label. I don't believe there's anything as a homosexual person as a noun, as someone who is like, oh, this is inherently, absolutely, like when we talk about absolutes, right? Like this is absolute homosexuality. Well, we don't really perceive homosexuality to be absolute. And instead, we view it as an adjective or as a feeling or someone who experiences SSA. And you know, in the past, we've talked about identity, feeling versus identity, and so on. And I think it's important that that distinction is there. And the reason why we almost, even I use the term LGBTQ sometimes, because that's the language that other people understand. So they understand what you mean. And sometimes we say, you know what, we're part of the LGBTQ community because we're not, you know, we don't say we didn't struggle with our sexuality. And to be honest, in common words terms, if you go to someone down the street and you're saying you're struggling with your sexuality, they think, oh, okay, LGBTQ community. That's just what they think. So I think it's interesting to denote why certain words are used and for what audience you're using those words. And I think that's really important. Now, I really like this in terms of foundationally, there are two things which hold the homosexual movement, LGBTQ. You're born gay and you can't change, and if you change, it's going to trigger suicidality or something like that. And as you see this picture here, Richard's book breaks both of those down very methodically as to why those two things just aren't true, and it's it's what the movement is built on. And I like how he takes celebrities, because he takes people whose lives are, if you like, already in the common sphere. You know, like sometimes when you're a therapist, you don't want to talk about clients because they're thinking, I can't believe you wrote about me in your book, right? So I think it's I think it's really clever that he's used celebrities. These are people already, their lives are in there. And I also believe, you know, look at some of the reasons here in terms of lack of bonding with same-sex parent, over attachment or wounding by opposite-sex parent, hypersensitivity, wounds with siblings, sexual abuse, body image wounds, same-sex peer wounds, adoption. Again, we don't kind of consider the parental dynamics with whether there's an adoption or a death of a parent, and also obviously promotion and socialization of LGBTQ in a sense. So these are common themes which we are seeing, you know, and sometimes it's very non-politically correct to say these things, but you know, if you are seeing something, we're just saying this objectively. We're not saying this on a place of, oh, you know, this is like this is always the case, or these are just some of the trends, some of the things that we see. It doesn't mean that everybody has it, but it is interesting to see some of these trends. So next, so this is perhaps my the one which I like the most out of all the book. If you don't get anything, this is the book, and this is the part which really hits me, because I think Richard, with his knowledge, is the only person who can maybe put this thing into three. It's like, right, 3 points. If you take away this is 3 points. So the first one, he talks about the wounds, right? So unmet needs, wounds, and we had Joseph Nicolosi Jr. join us last webinar, and what was the reparative drive? Reparative drive was the drive inside of you, which is trying to repair the wounds through acting out. So that's what the reparative drive is. It's not there. People think of reparative therapy, cure therapy. No, that's not what it's meant for. Reparative therapy is saying that I'm using sex as a mechanism to heal my wounds. Then homosexuality being an emotional condition. It's, a lot of the time we think of it as being only sexual, or, oh, you can't control yourself, or from a sexual lens. But actually, behind the, if you like, what feels like a compulsive need to act out, there is a legitimate need for same-sex love, whether it's with parents or peers, or whether it's the fact that, oh, I don't belong, I don't feel like I belong in my gender. And the intimacy, the fear of intimacy, like, oh, okay, I've never really considered women as attractive. Like, how is that going to work? How is the intimacy going to work? That's never happened for me. So it's so important to look at it as not a sexual disorder, but to look at it as an emotional deficit, right? And then the third one is the one which I think I've only seen Richard describe SSA as gender identity. Now, recently, that we have a lot of gender identity issues with trans and so on. But what's really interesting is that with SSA does have, people who have SSA do have gender identity issues. They don't have it at the level that they say they want to change their body, but they do have it at the level where they're not happy with their own sense of masculinity or femininity. So it's the gender deficit, which I would say is lighter, if I can use that term, in SSA than it would be in someone who's transgender. And then that goes back to attachment theory. So detachment, feeling detached from their own gender. So they'll be detached from the same-sex parent, their peers, detached from their body, and so on. So if anybody wanted to know what was behind SSA, these three. And I really like the gender identity, because when we talk about LGBT and you're like, what actually puts them together? I say what puts them together is gender identity deficit. Across them, you have a gender identity deficit. And what is this book for? Is it a book to slam LGBTQ? Is this what we're doing? If you're listening to this and you're thinking this is our intention, not at all. It's the book is really written so like I started, when you have somebody who's struggling, whether they identify as gay or whether they identify as same-sex attracted, the people around them need to be educated of how to deal with the issue, what language should be using, what's the right term, how can I be presenting God's love, how can I be showing God's love to that individual, so those wounds, those unmet wounds are being met. And it's not like, oh, until until you're straight, you're not accepted, or until you change your sexuality, you're not accepted.
Right.
So it's really, really important that the book is written mostly also for not the person who's struggling, but people around, like a spouse or a parent or a family member, to understand what this issue is, and to help. So that's why I really like this book, because it's not only written for someone who has the SSA, but it's also written for other people, to family members, friends, close ones, or people who just want to understand this, and look at the language that they use. Now you can go to pathinfo.org. You can check the material which is out there. It's on Amazon. So actually, I had one of my clients who said he's not a reader, and I believe it's on Audible.
Yes.
So as well. So
Yeah.
you can listen to it through Audible. So I do really recommend it. And I'm not going to take more time. I'm going to pass over to Richard to start.
Thank you, Ali. You did it all for me. Bye. Thank you for, I did not pay him for all his kind words and affirmations. I am deeply touched and very grateful for you, young man. I have two children older than you. And I'm grateful for strong support being created to help those in the Muslim community throughout the world get a sense of community and support and help in your either struggling personally with same-sex attraction or having a family member or friend and trying to figure out what can I and we do to help them. Okay, well, I shall give a brief synopsis of the book, which I think Ali did beautifully before me. For those of you who do not know me or have read any of the books, I myself struggled with unwanted same-sex attraction from elementary school and prayed for 25 years for God to take the desires away. And I thought maybe God doesn't listen to me because this is the worst sin or issue, which wasn't true. I finally found out when I was in my second therapy. I did so much therapy. And finally, I started praying the right prayer, which was, God, show me the meaning behind my same-sex attraction. And when I shifted the prayer, that's when one by one I began to discover the causes in my life that led to these homosexual desires. This is my family. I have been married for 43 years, longer than many of you have been alive. My wife, Jae-suk, hails from Korea, and we have three amazing adult children who are fulfilling their dreams in the world and making a big difference. I'd like to share about the content very briefly. Ali did a beautiful job about this new book, Understanding Our LGBTQ plus Loved Ones. And it is in paperback. And for those of us who like to listen, which I do, I recorded it. So it's my voice on Audible. There are 5 main chapters in the book. The first is a brief history of the gay rights movement. This is the first book that I wrote about this. And I wanted to lay that out because many who are struggling with their sexual orientation, gender identity, don't even know what's behind the gay rights movement. So I break it all down. And after each of the main chapters, I let one of my former clients share their personal stories of transformation. Joseph came to me as a young man and wanted to get married, was having some sex with guys, and his story is so amazing. Today he's been married for many years. He has three very young adult children, and he's now coaching other men. Chapter 2, homosexuality, nature, nurture, or both. So I break down what the science really says, not the socio-political messaging which is out there, but what's really behind this. And then Christian's story. He came to me so broken. He was married with two teenage children, ready to leave his wife and say, I was born this way. And after a year and a half of intense work, he just made so much radical internal change in his life. And so in his words, he shares his story. Chapter 3, as Ali was alluding to, clues as to why 5 celebrities in the USA experience SSA. And I'll break that down a little. It's just amazing to see the parallels of their backgrounds, which debunks the false concept born that way. Then Susan's story. I didn't work with Susan. She shares her story of immense brokenness and then again her transformation. Chapter 4, words that hurt and words that heal. Words are very important for anyone in the LGBTQ plus community. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. Now there's non-binary, intersex. There's on Facebook, there's 70 definitions one can choose about sexual orientation or gender identity. Yeah. And then Sam's story. I love this story. There was an amazing mentor who changed the whole trajectory of his life. And it's a beautiful story. And then finally, chapter 5, loving our LGBTQ plus loved ones in the right ways. So as Ali was saying, I'm a very pragmatic man. I don't just give you theory, I give what can we as individuals do to change this whole landscape in our families, in the community, in our mosque or church or place of worship, and in the whole culture. What can we do individually to make change? So I give a lot of practical suggestions. So let me just break down each chapter very succinctly, and then we can open it up to Q&A. So chapter 1, a brief history of the gay rights movement. And we know historically that those who struggle with their sexual identity or gender identity or sexuality have been so shamed, and they were shamed by their religions, they were shamed by politics and governments, they were shamed in the educational systems, its schools. Bullying is not a new concept. They were rejected even by the scientific community, and then finally rejected by family and friends. So these men and women, well, used to be me, our backs were against the wall. And the safest places should have been our families and our places of worship. And oftentimes they were the most judgmental. So we were hearing homosexuality is the greatest sin, and never any words of hope. Okay, it's the greatest sin. What do I do? This steamed in the 1950s and 60s, activists to make a plan. In 1989, this book, a landmark book, was published entitled After the Ball by Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen, two Harvard graduates, two quote unquote gay men. As Ali said, I view the term gay as a socio-political term for someone who experiences same-sex attraction and then decides to live a homosexual life. They created the most brilliant plan to homosexualize first the USA and the world. And it has been instituted brilliantly. So in the understanding our LGBTQ plus loved ones in this chapter, I give the main points of their plan. It's often referred to as the homosexual manifesto, much like the Marxist manifesto. And it's sheer genius. And it's so interesting because they did a 3-point program how to change it all. And their third point was called conversion. So I thought it's so funny because they're converting the whole society to think gay is good and lesbians great and transgender's awesome, And then, so clever, some of the LGBT activists took the conversion word and pejoratively labeled the kinds of therapy that I do and other professionals do as conversion therapy. It's reprehensible because we only work with people who are highly motivated. We don't work with anyone who does not want to explore transformation of their own feelings and thoughts and desires. So I thought it's so clever that they flipped the term. First, they converted everyone into endorsing them, and then they use that in a pejorative way to make us look like idiots. The homosexual movement, Kirk and Madsen say in their book, are based on these two pillars. They're born gay and therefore cannot change. They say it in the book that they know this is not valid scientifically or scripturally. Yet they chose this paradigm. And they hadn't developed the word homophobic yet. So they used the term homo-hatred. And they had to change people's prejudice. Anyway, I could talk for hours about it. It's greatly summated in this chapter. So they chose this paradigm knowing full well it was not true. But as they say, all is fair in love and war. In this chapter, I go into the divisiveness within religions, gay theology. Some religions, even denominations, accept, the others reject. And it's the same thing in politics. Laws are being changed. Schools are endorsing LGBTQ curriculum. It's just shocking because we have 11 years between our oldest son. He'll be 40 in a few months, and the youngest son is 11 years younger. The older two are like 40 and 39. And when they were in school, there was no promotion of LGBTQ. When the youngest was in school, and I would go to the parent-teacher meetings, there were posters all lining the school walls. This is a safe space for LGBTQ+. So it's radically changed now in the curriculum, teaching children that people are born this way, and that's it. In the scientific community since 1973, when homosexuality was removed from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, we're not allowed to talk about the causes or etiology of same-sex attraction or successful treatment. We are homophobic and anti-gay if we talk about this. And the entertainment industry, every movie, not every, but almost every movie and TV show and all over the internet is gay, 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 LGBT. It's everywhere. It's so normalized. And this was part of Kirk and Matson's strategic plan. So in the chapter, I talk about all these different aspects and how they're influencing us in the acceptance of this false paradigm. At the end of the book, after the ball, they say, don't think that now our approach will be loving people. They say, no, rage. Rage is our weapon and our strength. So it's so obvious to see they're so hurting. Behind it is so much pain. And they have such a great need to be loved. And it's palpable. And that's why the rest of the book I give answers what we can do. Chapter 2, homosexuality, nature, nurture, or both. What the biological, genetic, hormonal studies really say. What's the meaning behind SSA? Ali already showed you that. The 10 potential causes, and this is all very succinctly written in this book. It's a primer. It's a homosexuality 101. And 7 stages of coming out. And then change really is possible from the inside out, not just behaviorally. That's one thing in the therapy that I've done over 3 decades. It's not just a matter of you're going to change what you do. You're going to change who you are. So we change from the inside out. Of course, it's a multi-level and layered approach, cognitive, behavioral, and psychodynamic, all different kinds of ways. In 2016, Dr. Paul McHugh and Dr. Lawrence Mayer, both from Johns Hopkins University. If you haven't heard of it, it's an Ivy League university in the US. And Dr. Paul McHugh was 25 years chief psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins. And Dr. Lawrence Mayer is an epidemiologist and professor of psychiatry. They released a report entitled Sexuality and Gender. They were putting their lives and their careers at risk by doing this. It was a meta-analysis. They were looking at over 200 peer-reviewed scientific studies to see if, are people really born this way? Here are just a few quotes from their report. The understanding of sexual orientation as an innate biologically fixed property of human beings. The idea that people are born that way is not supported by scientific evidence. Sorry, Lady Gaga, not born that way. Sexual orientation in adolescence is fluid over the life course for some people, with one study estimating that as many as 80% of male adolescents who report same-sex attractions no longer do so as adults. Compared to heterosexuals, non-heterosexuals, meaning those who experience SSA, are about 2 to 3 times as likely to have experienced childhood sexual abuse. In my practice, I would say about 50% of my clients have experienced some form of childhood sexual abuse. So it's not a necessity to experience SSA. Don't think, oh, wow, was I abused and I don't know about it. Just some. Let's see. The hypothesis that gender identity is an innate fixed property of human beings that's independent of biological sex. That is, a person might be a man trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body is not supported by scientific evidence. And only a minority of children who experience cross-gender identification will continue to do so into adolescence or adulthood, which is now criminal because children in the US, in elementary school, a little boy at 5 years old can say, I'm really a girl. And many of the parents foster that and give them dresses and they must be accepted at school as a she or a they. That's the new fashion of the day. And it's criminal because most of these kids will grow out of those feelings. That's what the research shows. You can go to the website thenewadlantis.com, type in sexuality and gender, and you can get this report. It's not big and it's easy to read, and it's really remarkable that they published this. In 2019, a study was reported in the journal Science, led by researchers from Harvard and MIT. MIT is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The subjects were 470,000 people who identified as gay. They gave permission for their DNA to be studied and tested. This study was 10 times larger than any group previously studied. And the conclusion, there is no way to look at someone's DNA and predict whether they would be gay or straight. This was reported in Harvard Magazine. The title is, "There is Still No Gay Gene." This is 2019. It was reported in Nature, a little piece on CNN. Of course, this doesn't shake the whole foundation of that gay rights movement because everybody drank the Kool-Aid, believing, okay. Dr. Neil Whitehead and his wife Briar wrote this great book, sarcastic title, "My Genes Made Me Do It." And on their website, mygenes.co.nz, they're in New Zealand, they analyze all the most recent studies that are trying to purport a genetic or biologic or hormonal basis for having same-sex attraction. And they debunk them all using simple scientific research protocols. This book is available on their website or Amazon, and it's great. So, the homosexual movement is collapsed because we know, according to hard science, I'm not just talking about scripture or Quran writings, I'm talking about what the science really says is that no one is essentially born this way, and therefore change is possible. And just speaking this has made me public enemy number one of the LGBTQ plus community over the last 35 years since I've been doing this work. I did my internship at one of the oldest gay mental health agencies in the US. And I was there almost a year. And I wanted to show how much I loved men and women in that community. And I told them when they interviewed me for the residency there that, I used to live a gay life and I came out of that and I married and had kids. And they accepted me. And I learned so much. It was so painful. And I just had to keep my mouth shut. And I just prayed while I was there, God, don't let me have to counsel someone to, feel good about them being gay. And, and God heard my prayer, that prayer. And I helped co-facilitate a support group. There was just so much pain in the community. So, I could tell you stories. I hail from a Jewish background, so we can talk forever. So I need to discipline myself. So this, why was I mentioning? I'm trying to follow the thread of my thoughts. Okay, I'm 70. You have to give me some leeway for forgetfulness. There's also, I go into the 10 potential causes of same-sex attraction. And this is my real hair, by the way. I do not color my hair. I have good genes. Uh, I will not take time to go into these 10 variables. The point is, there's never one thing alone that creates same-sex attraction. It's confounding of different experiences. And if there's one variable that shows a kind of genetic or biologic influence, it's the temperament of hypersensitivity. What I and my colleagues have observed is that men and women who experience SSA are hypersensitive. And therefore they experience the parenting and their peers and the community in such a deeper way than others, and get easily hurt and don't reveal that. Keep it in, and then, as Dr. Moberly calls it, a defense detachment. They separate, and then, the homo-emotional wound or homosocial wounds develop because one did not internalize their own sense of gender identity. That's why Moberly first coined the term reparative drive. Dr. Joseph Nicolosi Sr. further developed it. So they didn't say reparative is like broken. They were saying it's the psyche's attempt to incorporate that which was not sufficiently experienced in early childhood and adolescence. So after adolescence, of course, those normal bonding needs for same-sex parents, same-sex peers become sexually charged. And the world says, well, you're gay or lesbian, which is not true. It represents hurts in the heart that have never been resolved and legitimate needs for love. And sex will never fulfill that, because the wounds and the hurts and the needs come pre-adolescent, and a child does not want or need sex. So that's why when we add sex to the mix, it gets all confused. Chapter 3, clues as to why 5 celebrities in the USA experience SSA. Greg Louganis is one of the most celebrated divers in world history, Olympic gold medals and national, international championships. Melissa Etheridge is a rock star, and she's won an Oscar and Grammys, very well known. John Amici is a former player in the NBA, National Basketball Association. Actually, he lives in the UK. His mother's from the UK. His father was Nigerian. He grew up first in the US, but then most of his life was in the UK. And he became Rosie O'Donnell. She's a movie star, talk show host. And finally, Kevin Jennings. He founded GLSEN, which I talk about in Chapter 1, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. There are GLSEN clubs in middle schools, high schools, thousands throughout the world. And Kevin created this. I'll share a little more about that. As Ali showed, I did this chart in the chapter with 9 of the 10 potential causes. And then I show how each one, check, 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 check. So it's so easy to see that it's an acquired condition, SSA. And I don't say someone has SSA. That's, more of a noun. Anyone who, it's an experience. Someone, he or she experiences SSA, or I experience SSA, or you experience. It's not who you are. It's an adjective describing one's feelings and thoughts. I read each one of their autobiographies. It took me 1 year to do this chapter because it's a lot of work. I had to read through each one, look at the 10 causes. I had to write down, poignant quotes from their book. Then I had to get permission from their publishers to use quotes, and it was a long process. Greg's history is so painful. Melissa Etheridge, her book, The Truth Is My Life in Love and Music. And she just puts it all out there. How blah, painful and messed up. And John Amici, the basketball player, who then became a psychologist in the UK. And he goes around the world promoting LGBTQ plus, rights. Rosie O'Donnell, yeah, she laid it out so rawly in her book, raw, about her pain. And then finally, Kevin Jennings, he was with the US Department of Education. And the sex curricula all over the USA was changed largely because of the influence of this man. And reading his background, oh, it's just knives and daggers. I cried reading his book and all these others, just so much pain. So again, it's just insane to say, oh, they were born this way. It's all mapped out. And I won't say which one, but when I wrote the evaluation, I do an evaluation based on the 10 causes, and then I lump some of them together using the quotes of each one of these famous people. And I sent it, when I first did this, I sent each one of them. I don't know if it ever got to them. I did about 10 people in my career. These were just 5. And then I asked the publisher permission. So I sent what I wanted to say. One publisher threatened to sue me if I published this. And I didn't have money for a lawyer, so I got some pro bono lawyer. And there's what's called Fair Use Act, how many quotes I could use. So in many of their books, I had to water down the quotes and paraphrase it because of the law. I can only use so many words. And one of the publishers didn't understand who I was, my purpose or intent, which I told them I'm writing a book, blah, blah, blah. And they gave me carte blanche, use as much as you want. And I have it in writing, so there's tons of quotes on one particular one of these 5. And, so I was, they threatened to sue me if I published this. And finally I said, sue me. There's not much you can take. My career has been a labor of love. I do nothing to make, we survive. Every day is a daily miracle. And they never sued me. So it's all there for you to read their evaluations. And then what I do at the end of each story, in the middle of, in between these chapters and in this one, I write down, okay, now you see what she or he went through. Here are practical things that you can do to help such a man or woman to recover their true gender identity and sexuality. So I try to map that out throughout the book, whatever I'm writing, practical suggestions, what anybody can do to help such a man or woman. Then chapter 4, words that hurt and words that heal. And I won't go into it. No more hate speech, only loving words. No more gay, start using SSA. No more sexual orientation. Well, only heterosexual. Well, we're designed, man and woman, fit together. I was on Larry King Live, a big show on CNN years ago, debating a lesbian psychiatrist. And I said, Shelley, I didn't want to call her by her doctor so-and-so. I said, Shelley, look, this and this, they fit together biologically. And two of these things don't work. So it's simple biology. Well, she was pissed off. No more same-sex marriage, only marriage. No more homophobia or anti-gay words and actions that help and heal. No more LGBTQ+, only people who are hurting and in need of real love. And I'm not saying, just you throw the baby out with the bathwater of your beliefs. It's love and truth in equal measure. We cannot just truth people and just love. That's the whole new political campaign they created. Love is love. to win elections. And that I've seen that slogan now, "Love is love," all over TV shows and movies. I watched last night the latest episode of Ted Lasso, if anyone is a Ted Lasso fan, and it was right there. Love is love. When anyway, so uh, no more love the sinner, hate the sin. The reason is this: anyone who has adopted a gay identity or lesbian, trans, what have you, they believe I'm born this way. So we cannot say, well, I love you and not your gay behavior or homosexual behavior. That doesn't compute because they believe they're innately gay. So we cannot use that, well, love I don't like what they do and I like them. It doesn't work. We have to stand with them. And I give practical, in the next chapter. So no more born gay and cannot change. Only no one's essentially born this way. No one chooses to have SSA, and change is possible. And then the final chapter are three main things. Apologize if you said, did, or spoke wrong things. And share the truth. No one's essentially born this way. No one chooses it, and change is possible. That's all based on science. And then finally, love them in the right ways. And I say, listen, learn from them, and love unconditionally. And you will be the last one standing, because statistically, homosexual relationships, they do not work. And I put some of that in the book. So this is essentially understanding our LGBTQ plus loved ones. It's a primer for anyone. I wrote it for anyone who's dealing with this issue, their families, and for the general public, so we can get this knowledge out there. And as Ali showed in the beginning, I wrote the Being Gay book, which goes into the 10 potential causes in much greater detail, and then a 4-stage model of resolving unwanted SSA. And gay children, straight parents, for family and friends who have SSA loved ones. And as all my work, it's pragmatic. It's not just a book to read, it's a book to do. And I updated a children's book, my fun Rich's Home, and with a great graphic artist from Pakistan. I was so happy to look at the cover, seeing Richard Cohen and M. Wasim. Let them try to come against a Jew and a Muslim, bite me. And so he did such beautiful graphics in the book. And there's so many children's books now which are promoting LGBT, blah, blah, blah. This is the only one in existence that shows a little of where SSA comes from and how it can be resolved. And I did a talk last time I was here on Triple T, Time, Touch, and Talk. This is a book for everyone about healing and love. Our websites are pathinfo.org, which will be redesigned in the next few weeks. My designer is from, well, I won't say where he's from. However, he redesigned the timetouchandtalk.com website. It's going to go live in the next week. And anyway, be quiet, me. Anyway, he's Muslim. That's what I wanted to say. My designer is from, I won't say where he lives, in the
Muslim
middle.
nation.
Yes, in a Muslim nation. So I have this karma to attract a lot of Muslim people in my training and in the design work. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's I think, Richard, you've made the book so accessible that,
Yeah,
for us in the Muslim community, we, I have your books translated into Arabic. They're translated into so many different,
yeah,
and I think you're one of the few, or maybe the only counselor who went to Middle East and you
yeah,
said, actually, we need to share this knowledge.
yeah.
And
Right.
and I look at your work and I'm like, okay, you started with psychotherapy, but the latter part of your years, you're saying this word needs to go out. We need to
Yeah,
educate. We need to get people trained in this because
yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah.
the
This,
when you're registering yourself as a counselor or a therapist,
yeah,
you can't possibly work on this issue. It's completely put aside. So there's a huge need for training, resources, um, and like honestly, like it, it, I, I and people around Strong Support, we're so grateful to what you call your labor of love
yeah,
over the years in terms of producing the material, making it accessible,
right.
even just last year, making this book and in terms of, it's, uh, I would also say it's fairly priced, it's very easy,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
attainable, and,
yeah,
it really shows that you're there to improve not just your own community in terms of the Christian community, but you've had like I love he's Pakistani. I'm Pakistani as well,
oh,
so
yeah.
I love that. And that your work has affected across the world, and um, a lot of people very grateful for it.
Thank you.
So thank you, and thank you for that.
Well,
Really,
I have a request to anyone who's listening. I have this amazing publisher in Turkey, and they have published 3 books now in Turkish. Of course, it's largely a Muslim population. And they've just keep prodding me. So I am working on a new book, which will be published in a few months. It's going to be very short. My working title right now is uh, Lessons Learned in a Lifetime from a Gay Client to a Straight Therapist. That should piss a lot of people off. I don't know. That's just a working title, and it will be very short for therapists. That they said there's no book, for therapists who are working with the population of those who want to come out of SSA and for their family members. And the therapists are not, they're clueless. So I'm writing a short book, kind of incorporating from the being gay and the gay children principles, and then tying it all together with what I've learned in, 35 years of doing this. So that will be the next baby that will be born.
amazing. I just love that you're continuing. It just shows it's coming from a place of calling. It's coming from
Yes,
a true
completely.
place of doing this work, and it really shows through the work. And yeah, I'm sure we have people in Turkey around. We definitely have links there. So
Yeah.
um, this is anything we can do to support that, we'd love to. Um, so we now enter the Q&A section. So if you're joining us on Zoom, you will see there's a Q&A option. You can write your questions, and you can rate the questions which are already there as well. If you would like to speak, there's also the opportunity to speak, but just be aware that your name will be shown and this is recorded. So yeah, we have a first question or a comment. Let me just see. So it says, I absolutely loved the workshop. It was wholesome and genuine. Thank you so much for this. It helped me understand so much and gave clarity that I needed for my practice. Much admiration and gratitude from Pakistan. So we have another person from Pakistan. It says, yay! Shout out to
Assalamualaikum.
Pakistan. I love that. So thank you for that. Thank you for your
Shukran.
shukr for your comment. Um, as people are probably writing or considering, one of the things I had um, when I read the book and I went through it was, um, if you're at the state where you're reading, and some of the clients, they come to me and they say, there isn't, when we look back, there isn't any one trauma or anything that stands out to us, and we have the attraction still, but we we don't sometimes identify with some of the 10 issues and stuff. What
Mhm.
would you say to people like that in terms of which are starting off and saying, well, this is interesting. I know I had some issues, but I'm not fully sure what those issues were because it's never been laid out.
First, it doesn't have to look or feel like trauma for it to be hurtful. Again, SSA is not about sex. It's an emotionally based condition of hurts that have not been heard or healed and legitimate needs for love. And they are legitimate. A guy wanting another guy. It's just what's behind it. So the second part you asked was, well, I read the 10 causes and I cannot relate. I don't believe that. Because as in the Triple T, Time, Touch, and Talk book, everybody has experienced wounding in some way, shape, or form. So if someone says, well, I can't relate to the 10, I just say, you're not human. You're not breathing, or you're not in tune or in touch. Everybody. Because I just, in the Triple T, as I went around the world and taught and trained, I remember it was a big group of pastors in this area and people in ministry, about 60 of them. And I did a 5-day training. It used to be the counselor training. That's what I did in Egypt, in Cairo. And at the end of the first day, and I left a lot of time for Q&A, and one his a bishop of a like 8,000 member church said, "You're not talking about LGBT people. You're talking about me. You're talking about us." So all of them could relate to the 10 potential causes and in their own personal lives. So I would dig a little deeper if someone says I can't find any. And again, don't look for trauma. Uh, once repeating hypersensitivity. And so that individual's perception of reality becomes their truth. It's not necessarily what really happened. Dr. Nathan, what's his name? In the book, I quote him saying, children are the best tape recorders and the worst interpreters. So, based on our filters, we experience our parents, our siblings, our peers, the community. We do everybody very differently. I'm too thin. I'm too wide. I'm too high. I'm too short. I'm too this complexion. I'm not enough of that. And in every race or religion, and whatever it is, everybody has unresolved issues. And it's tracing, then I say to the guy or woman, well, tell me the type of person you're attracted to. I want to know every detail. whether it be his body or his brains or his personality. Paint a picture. And that reveals the wounds and the needs by seeing the type of person that he or she is attracted to.
Beautiful. No, and I completely agree. Sometimes people are so, they don't actually know that they have one of those tens because they've not gone back. And uh, I love, like, if you put in the book as well, the hidden meaning behind the SSA, that behind the attraction, our attractions don't develop in a vacuum. They come from somewhere, and they're key to understanding what's gone wrong. And even though most clients come in, they're very shameful to describe
Yeah.
exactly what type of individual they're attracted to, but actually that in itself is the clue for the healing work.
Yep.
So thank definitely agree. There's a question which says, in the potential variables creating SSA, can you please elaborate a bit more on the heredity elements? Okay.
Yeah, by heredity, I mean our generational history. In psychology, it's transgenerational. There's a specific school of therapy, and they look at generations. So when I do like in the Being Gay book, ta-da, I put the questionnaire that I give each prospective client. Well, I don't do therapy anymore, just so you know. And by looking at three generations, grandparents, parents, and that individual, and if he or she's married, then we have another generation, we can see patterns of, for example, with men, we see detachment, father, son over generations until that boy develops, ta-da, SSA. And it's not just in a vacuum. There has been a chasm between fathers and sons for generations, mother, daughter, and then she develops SSA. So that child who has SSA is a gift to heal the lineage. I remember being in Mexico and they were asking, gosh, so many big audiences all over the country, and well, our little boy is 7 and he likes to play with the Barbies, and what do I do? You think, so I said, what I'm going to say is counterintuitive. It's going to shock you. You're going to get down, Dad, on the floor with the boy, and you play with Barbie and the boy, and ask him, what is it about Barbie you like so much? Oh, I like her hair. I like her dress. And Dad can say, well, I like it too. And so I said, you join in his world. You can't just do soccer, or you call it football, and, sports. You have to join first. And he is a message. He's a messenger from God to help heal the lineage. So if you join with your son, over time, he will begin to internalize your sense of masculinity. And then after a while, you can play football or whatever with him, and he'll happily do it. And there's a lot of research that shows this. So heredity are the wounds that are passed down. It could be sexual abuse is generational, and there's a lot of research on that. It could be addictions, alcohol. Like, my Jewish background, we were alcoholics hundreds of years ago, and we kind of worked it out of our system. So now it's other stuff. So these are unresolved issues in the father and the mother's line that will be passed to the child. And is like, oh, why does one child wrestle with this issue and another wrestle with that issue? This is my personal observation, is each child will carry a different, of course, personality and temperament and lineage issues to take on. And so that's what I mean by heredity. Exodus 34, 6 and 7. The sins of the father and the father's father are passed to the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generations. So issues don't disappear. And it says God is forgiving and God is loving. And if there's unrepentance or there's issues that are per perpetuated generationally, using people, stealing money, people with money issues, there's reasons why. So that's what I mean by heredity. I don't mean born that way stuff, about genetics or SSA. I mean generational, transgenerational, unresolved issues we carry. Those are some invisible forces.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a comment saying that was wonderfully explained. Thank you. So thank you for that. We have another question. Thank you for all of the info. Is fetish or BDSM part of the SSA?
Well, is what?
Is the fetish or BDSM part of the same-sex attraction?
Okay, the fetish, I understand. The BDSM, what's that?
Yeah, that's the what's the
S&M? Like,
S&M, yeah,
yeah.
S&M. So it's like bondage,
Yeah,
discipline, and
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
I think you alluded to it earlier that it's like a spectrum. It's like SSA is here, and then you go to transgender. It's like intense. There's psychological words I'd love to use, but I would be put in, political prison. What do you call it? Being politically correct.
Go
Um,
on. We don't mind. We don't mind.
really, um, so there's SSA, and then transgender is more, and then you get into fetish. No, fetish is over here too, but you're talking about bondage, and then all the whipping.
Paperback is
Yeah, that is more detachment. That is greater detachment. And I knew this one guy. I was at the end of my counseling practice because I've been teaching like 15 years now, so I do consultations. Anyway, he came in. I knew him like decades before, and married 5 children. And he was telling me that like 3, 4 nights a week before he went home to his wife and kids, he would go to the parks and have sex with guys. I mean, meet, do it, leave, go home. At the end of that, preliminary, and I was doing it as a gift because I know him, I know his wife, and I wasn't doing therapy. Anyway, I said to him, as I say to everyone, would you like a hug? I'm a great hugger. And he said, no. And it was so like, whew, no touch, no handshake, no anything. Then the guy leaves my office. Well, I imagined he would go to the park, have sex, then go home. Any kind of intimacy was an assault upon his being. So people who are doing S&M and any those types of things it's just, I'm not judging anyone. I'm as wacko and messed up as everyone. It's just that's real detachment from true intimacy, because intimacy is looking into someone's eyes, being vulnerable, and that's very scary, whether it be a friendship or a love relationship. So that type of stuff is, wow, a lot of hurt and pain being masked by such behaviors. And fetishes are different. Fetishes are, I've had one guy, he loved to wash feet, play with someone's feet. I had another one who loved a particular type of shoes. Other is underwear, like women's or all kinds. And fetishes, there was one great book that was just kicked out of the literature, but he found that if you trace the origin of the particular fetish, that's when there was psychic splitting. There was real pain happened in the child's life. And I could give you examples, but I want to leave more time. So that's when he split. It's a defensive mechanism God gives us to be able to kind of transcend the present by splitting from it. I had it when I was 5 years old and I was sexually abused by my uncle. And we who were sexually abused, we like leave our bodies. It's too wacko and painful. So, like many of us, like went outside of our bodies and were looking down at what was happening, unable to contain the pain that we were experiencing at the time. So, similarly with a fetish, there's so much pain in the moment looking at a shoe or looking at a hair. That's easy to hang on to. Oh, okay, the hair or the shoe or the sock or the underwear. That's a grounding. It's like a grounding element to be able to manage the pain at the time. So with clients that I've had who have particular fetishes, when we trace it back systematically, not like abracadabra, go, poof, it's gone. No, we have to go systematically, step by step, and make that inner child, that part of us that was so wounded, safe first. And, there's, as a therapist, blah, 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 blah. So there's gradations of hurt in our psyches, and they all have reasons. And S&M, they all have reasons. I had this one guy, he was a big bodybuilder, so handsome, and he buffed up, he was pumped up and big, and his fantasy was to put on a woman's dress and and this is the most masculine looking guy in the world, like a Schwarzenegger. And in the fantasy, he laid on the bed, legs apart, he's wearing a dress, and one after another, men outside the door waiting, and then like, boom, effed him, one after another. And then finished, next guy would come in. And it just said all so much about his personality and what had been frozen, and I won't go into that. There's always reasons for those kinds of manifestations in our lives. Coping.
I think one of the key things in your work which distinguishes work from other psychotherapists is the importance of touch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time in therapy, you're like, oh, you can't hug your client, you can't hold, and it negates the fact that a lot of our clients have never had healthy touch. They've never had what that means.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to go into my office. Here, everybody, you can see outside.
Oh, wow.
Behind our home. And this is my office. And these are my touch poses.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So this is our youngest. And I showed healthy hugging and then holding, sorry, the glare, and then arm around the shoulder. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I was touch starved. And without healthy touch, we're all dead.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the key things that just standard psychotherapy misses.
Yep.
In terms of that people are touch deprived, and a lot of people, they can't find ways for healthy touch, like
right.
and it's a huge part of it was a huge part for me in terms of even for me at one point I was going to a sports massage. And why was I doing it? Because I was like, I just want another man's body to feel my body, and for me not to eroticize that feeling. And it was huge. It was huge in what it did. And I was I was able to de-eroticize
Right.
a hug or someone doing that,
Yeah.
and not be ashamed to ask for hugs or
Yes.
give hugs. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I went to a when I was doing my healing work, I went to a massage therapist and OSA guy, opposite sex attracted, and when he would, so start on the room and then turn around and he was going around my genital area, I got an erection. And I said to him, "You don't have to touch it. You don't have to play with it. What goes up will come down." And he was totally cool. And he was very comfortable and he had done a lot of 12-step healing work. And he started working on the pubic bone right above the genitals and digging in. And it was safe. It was in his basement. Blah, blah, blah. And I started screaming and crying. And he said, "Richard, let it go." And he was so comfortable with my processing. And it
Wow.
was all the pain stored in there from the time I was 5, 6 years old when my uncle began to have sex with me. And it took a couple months, like every week I went, and he was so generous in allowing me to process that and turn those painful erotic feelings and I had sex with other guys when I got older. It just helped me work through that. So as you were saying, the sports massage and getting healthy touch, and yeah, we have to work through those, because we're in adult bodies now. So those desires became sexualized through and after adolescence, and we just have to systematically work back. So healthy touch, healthy hugs, it's a prerequisite being a human being.
Absolutely. So much truth in there. And thank you for sharing that. Next question. What should be done when the child keeps on bringing up the discussion of accepting her as gay and letting her SSA partner be invited on occasions, birthdays, etc.? So I'm guessing this is coming from a parent who has a child who identifies
Right.
as
As a lesbian.
lesbian. Yeah.
Well, you may not like my answer. It's in the book. Okay, there is a big difference between acceptance and approval, and they don't get it. So, if it were my daughter, I would say, I love, and I teach the parents to say this with a smile. I love and accept you just the way you are. Not I love and accept you, no. I love and accept you just the way you are. That's what you say. And so that's number one. And about letting her girlfriend come to a family event. Well, my question is, if your daughter was dating a guy, would you let her bring him to a family event? If the answer is yes, then I would say yes to invite the girlfriend. That's what I would do. And in the US, we have sales like a twofer, buy one, get one free. So you get two children to love unconditionally as God does. God doesn't reject us because we mess up and make mistakes. We're all fallible humans working our way through this. And then be sure to hug the girlfriend, show her lots of affection. And if your daughter then says after a while, "Oh, mom and or dad, does this mean you've changed and you think it's okay that I'm lesbian?" Then comes this. Smile and say, "No." You can't say, "No." You have to smile and say, "No. This is unconditional love. And I love you just the way you are." That's And that is the unconditional love of God. He doesn't always approve. So you say, "No." which is a non-sequential. And so it's counterintuitive. And so, no, I don't approve. And I love you just the way you are. So acceptance, I accept you. I accept where you're at. I accept your view of you. Doesn't mean I believe it. I accept it. And, so I love you just the way you are. And do you approve? No. Well, you have to smile when you're going back and forth. Otherwise, you lost the battle. Hard, very hard. And do
Yes,
your own
absolutely.
homework. Yeah.
Hard to show unconditional love,
Yeah.
definitely, but very, very well put.
Yeah.
Um, Follow up to what we were saying on touch. What can we do if we can't find this hug and touch, especially if we live abroad? Influence, but it's yeah. So a lot of people say that, oh, Ali, I am dying for a hug and touch, and and I think maybe last time we had a conversation where we were saying having maybe places where people can go and just have a cuddle or a
Yeah.
hug, like TTT centers. I remember. So yeah, yeah,
I pray it will be born. That's the vision God gave me. I don't know, I guess it's
uh-huh,
30 years ago to create triple T centers all over the world, time, touch, and talk, where you can go in and you check in with the receptionist and okay, I would like 30 minutes of holding with a young man or a middle-aged man or an older man. And then you go into the room, beautiful music, and you can be held. There's a menu, like I just showed you, and you get hugged, you get held, and there will be the anger room where you can, maybe you're pissed at your wife or your boss or your parents, and you beat the crap out of it, and you get it, and then cry and get held if you want that. So that's a vision, that's a dream for now. As Ali said, go get a massage with a safe person. If it's going to be a gay identified person, that will be, they'll be happy perhaps to give you a happy ending. Or so make sure it's a safe person. For years, when I would get erections during massage, I would say, don't worry about it. It'll, it's conditioning and it'll go down. And most massage therapists have seen it all. So you don't have to worry. And don't lay there thinking, oh my God, I don't want to get a hard on. I don't want to get a hard, you're wasting your money and time. So you can preempt it saying, I may get an erection, and you just, you don't have to touch it. So I know that's hard. That's a stretch to say that, and save your time, put it out there, and so you don't have to be worrying, and get healthy touch and hugs. In all the books, well, not all, but in the Being Gay book and in this new book, there are pictures of what I just showed you over there, the holding and the hugging and the touching and the different stuff. Ask your mentors, after you get close and you feel close enough, say, would you be willing to, I guess I have in this book there's a few. I do a few pictures, and in the Being Gay book, there's over there, there's the menu of different. So ask your mentors if he would be willing to hug you or she would be willing to hug you. You've got to put your needs out, as scary as it is. One great Arthur Goldberg used to say, his daddy said to him, never say no for the next person. Always ask. You'll get a yes or a no. Okay, at least you put your needs out.
absolutely. And I like also what you say, that it's multifaceted. Like you said, it's CBT, it's psychodynamic. So
Yep.
it's knowing what the body needs,
Yep.
knowing what the soul needs, kind of like it's a multifaceted work. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
read all the books and it's going to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sense.
Uh,
It needs to be really practical
mhm.
in terms of, okay, this is my wounds. Okay, I understand what my wounds are.
Mhm.
Okay, I now understand what my body needs. My body needs touch.
Mhm.
Um, I understand when spiritually, when I'm speaking to God, how am I seeing Him? There's so many layers of this work, and you know what you just said with touch, and I always feel like, oh, whenever I meet someone who I know has SSA, I make sure I give them a very big long hug because I know that's what's needed. And how has it been for you being on the other side? Because I can relate to you in that, working working on your own stuff, and then in your career you switch around where you're helping people now and seeing the change. How has the shift been for you in terms of doing that? Because I really value, like one of the ways I tell people how oppressed this population is, that the people who go through the grief or go through the SSA are
Mhm.
then the people who are the only people who are helping,
Yeah.
it's a bit like if we were saying, like, people who have depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
Oh, only people who have depression and
Yeah.
anxiety can be therapists for people
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
have that, because we live in a world where it's
Yeah.
almost like, unless you have gone through the
Yeah.
SSA,
Yeah.
you don't understand how difficult it is.
Yeah.
And obviously, you'll, when you say mashallah, like 30, 40 years ahead of this. I just want to see when you look back in terms of your career and say, wow, this is what God tested with me when I was younger. And this is the change like, I'm now on the other side. I'm helping people going through that, how that feels like for you.
Well, I could say one word that would describe it. Hell.
Um,
You have had others on this strong support, wonderful platform, and who are, doing this type of work. And well, I don't have anything to worry about anymore. I'm at the end of my. So I will be honest. I thought, oh, finally, I'm going to find colleagues who understand and we can take care of each other and we can hug or hold each other. We can go out, we can cry. Oh, Ollie, I wish that had happened for me. And I don't know, I'm weird. I'm weird in that I'm very tactile. I was doing experiential healing work before the others were doing it. So they were all into CBT, cognitive behavioral, and here's Cohen like doing bioenergetics and somatic work and voice dialogue. And what the hell planet is this guy from? So I would go to colleagues and conferences and, oh yeah, and everybody was so cerebral. And I was saying, oh, I don't want to be judgmental. It's just my experience, Ali, of not being able to find.
People who resonate with,
Yes.
and people
So
resonate.
it's,
Somatic is blowing
yeah,
up now in terms of
now it's becoming more normal. God makes me always ahead of the curve, and it's a very lonely place to be. So, like I said in my healing work, I was raised Jewish. I became a Christian. My boyfriend was Christian. And so in college, undergrad, I became Christian. And um, I never got my healing in the church or I did everything outside, secular. And my master's degree in counseling psych, secular. I didn't do it within the Christian community because I didn't really find healing there. I found people so boring and so dry and afraid. So It's been lonely, Ali, because I so had hoped we could really swim in the pool together, so to speak, metaphorically, and people were afraid of me. And I don't know. I had an expression in the support group that I led for like a couple decades. Life is not a popularity contest. It's a come as you are party. And I've always come, not that way, as I am. What you see is what you get. And just by the nature of my being out there, it just scared people. Like when I went to these conferences and the Christian leaders in this, and it was like, oh my gosh, there's Cohen. Everybody turn and go. It was like not a warm, welcoming, fuzzy place. So, and then North, oh, I could tell you so many stories. It's been difficult for me, honestly, in all honesty. And my closest people have nothing to do with that area. I mean, my bestest friend in the world, he was one of the three men who helped save my life when I needed lots of holding and I was working through the abuse and all that pain. And now he's a therapist and I refer people to him. And we've known each other like 40 years and he helped save my life. He never dealt with this. He deals with his, his own stuff. And he's a very warm, compassionate, sensitive guy. So I've had to find, those great, roots, rocks in my life for me. But within the community, it's been really difficult. Sorry, folks. I'm just saying my truth.
And and I love you for saying that truth because it's honest. Because when I do look at your work, you're the only one saying, "Oh, touch is important.
Yep.
It's we need to stop thinking of
Yep.
kind of just CBT and
Yeah.
this model. We need to break it."
Yep.
And only now, very very later on, you have somatic experience saying, like all of this. Oh, how does the body holds the score? All of this that is coming way back later, where people are realizing that, oh, we have physiological needs, like
Yeah.
the body stores the emotion, and
Yes. Yes.
it's so important to engage, not just through the brain, but and
Definitively,
and
but
that's
also.
why the experiential weekends are
Yeah.
sometimes they're a huge boost for people when they're just stuck in therapy, and you go to an experiential weekend, or I know you do family sessions, or you actually kind of um, go through something like that, or go through holding sessions. That's where actually you get a lot of the healing. And um,
Yeah.
it's beautiful for you to say that you've had a decade-old friendship which has supported you, because that's essentially what it is. And
Yeah.
um, we can see that, like I said before, that you're pioneering, that there wasn't anybody who was really talking about touch in that level. And then that now, it's like sometimes they say, like, if the top of the class is lonely, it's lonely being at the top of the class, like
Yeah.
when you're ahead of the curve and you're
Right.
thinking, oh, okay, how are
Yeah.
people going to realize this? But
Yeah.
like, I know from the work's been a huge benefit for me. It's a benefit for people who continues to be a benefit for people, continues to be a benefit to the hundreds of people you've trained, and so on. But I also really like that you're saying it's very isolating, because it's almost like,
Yeah.
okay, if I'm doing this part of work, I'm almost excommunicated from the entire psychotherapy community because of this. And only people who've gone through the pain of,
Yep.
as they say, know that um, it's worth not caring about our
Yeah.
reputation to do this work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what when you go to a therapist and it's just a standard therapist,
Yeah.
nothing compares to if you go to a therapist who's gone and said, I've done my work,
Yep.
I've gone through this,
Yep.
this is what it is. And the people see that, your
Yep.
clients see it, they know that this
Yep.
person is talking from experience, they're talking
Right.
from knowledge, they're
Right.
talking from research. um, and you know how you spent a year looking at five celebrities' autobiographies to get that out. I mean, if that's not testament to how much you really believe in the work, then I don't know what is. And I think that when you see people who are doing work which is coming from a natural calling from God,
Yeah.
you really see that. And uh and I'm so grateful that you're continuing to do the work. And we have this term in Islam which is called sadqa jariya, which is like a charity that keeps on giving even after you go. So like you create something and you do something, and even after you're gone, that knowledge is still going. And I firmly believe what you started, the education you put in, the platform you've given in, the people that you've educated, that is a change in how we look at this issue. My mom actually came and she said to me, how did you connect with Richard? And I was like, I don't know. I think Richard is such a nice person that I just contacted him and say, hey, I'm one of your fans. I've got this little organization called Strong Support. Would you come by? And he said, sure. And whenever I can tell to the people here, whenever I've approached Richard, he's immediately responded. He's put Strong Support as a resource in
Yes.
the book. He's put it on
Yep.
the website,
Yep.
and I love how this work crosses boundaries, it
Yes.
crosses faiths,
Yep.
it crosses all that, and when
And the
you have
pond.
exact crosses the pond, exactly. And when you have people like this working, then this person is working because this is their calling, this is their work,
Yep.
and that's why they're doing it. So I think that's definitely great. I know we're running short of time, so I just want to take a few questions if that's okay. I don't
Yeah.
want to take too much
You.
of your
Yeah.
time. Uh, there's another question saying, where can we find both of you and your work on social media? Would love to connect and work together on some projects if possible.
I last year I had this very inexpensive social media marketing company help me promote Triple T on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, Pinterest, whatever, LinkedIn. And it was I was writing a lot. It was anyway, all that to say they really wanted to do the SSA stuff. And I said, no, I'm not ready for that because I've been a lightning rod for, over 30 years and I was on Howard Stern, I've been on Jimmy Kimmel Live, I've done so much. And just where I'm at now in the season of my life, I don't want to do that. It's a great cost. I have never wanted personally to be in the spotlight for this. It's not my choice. Like you were saying, it's been a calling. God asked me to do this, and I idiotically said yes. So, um, because without God, I wouldn't be alive. I would have died. My former boyfriend died of HIV and AIDS related diseases. Could have been me. So I'm not doing social media. I have a Facebook page, Richard Cohen in Bowie, Maryland. So I put, like, you have the strong support flyers up there and other stuff that I do. Go to our website, pathinfo.org, or you can email me, from rcohen at pathinfo.org, our website. As Ali said, I'll respond. Uh, I'm not doing a lot of social media now. I don't know if I'll ever be ready for that again because at my age and stage, I don't want to keep my mouth shut. And if I start, I'm going to, I will, and I know how to craft my message. I know how to do a 30-second, a 60-second, a 1.5 minute message because I did so much media. I had to learn, but I'm not interested in social media at this point. We'll see if I ever get there, but right now, no. Just the websites, timetouchandtalk.com and pathinfo.org. You can contact me that way. Thank you, though, for asking.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you. You can uh, uh, email us on Strong Support, and we can definitely work on projects or so on.
Yes, let the
Um,
young man. He's the future.
No, I know what you mean by it. This isn't the work requires a lot of tough skin and in terms of it. And when you're as wise as you are, you can't be bothered with the niceties of things.
Oh, I
I can.
can. I will be a more of a straight shooter. The first 10, 12 years I did media before you were born or when you were born. I used to be so deferential and, oh, okay, tell me how horrible I am and what I is. And then after 10 years or 12 years, I said, no, no, no more. So I used the same strategy. They turned a psychological and a religious issue and they turned it into a social justice, human rights issue. So I said, I'm not stupid. I can do the same. So when I was debating leaders of worldwide gay organizations. And now, Richard, and I would just smile and I come very composed. I'd say, excuse me, this is a human rights issue. I accept and affirm your right to live a gay life. And therefore, you need to affirm and accept my right to come out of homosexuality and fulfill my dream of being married to a woman and have a family. Are you against my human right? And they were, hubba, ba, 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 you know. So I turned the strategy around so I can be clever and coy and whatever. Just now at, my 70s, I'd like to let part of my personality really come out and say what I think and get in trouble for it. So that's why I got to pray because there's my human side and I have to do what God wants me to do, not what I want me to do.
We'll end on this last question. How can we politely put forward our point of view without being viewed as bad? So, a lot of people uh, don't sometimes know I guess exactly what you've been just saying right now.
Mhm.
Um, how can how can you put this stance to people without people thinking you're a bigot or homophobe or whatever?
Yeah, don't try to intellectually win this argument with anyone who's been co-opted into the innate immutable, born that way, can't change. You have to pick your battles wisely and how to interject your opinion or point of view. And you need to do it with intelligence and with heart. I understand. So you think I'm born or people are born gay and they cannot change. And I see, I understand. And don't say I understand, but, because then you annihilated all the good. So your conjunction is and. I understand what you think, what you believe, and I've read a lot of the science. And I know people personally who have resolved their unwanted same-sex attraction and are living happy, fulfilled heterosexual lives. I know it's possible. So that's a little, and a lot of that wording, not to be self-promoting, this is not, an author makes a penny, like a few pennies from a book, by the way. Unless you're a J.K. Grisham or a J.K. Rawlings, you don't make squat. So, in chapter 4, it says how to frame your words. So do it with intelligence and don't try to win anyone over. You won't. I only do it, for example, when my kids were growing up and I would go to their football games. You call it football, we call it soccer. And I was cheering, yay, and the parents are talking, oh, what do you do? What do you do? So I would always say, oh, I'm a therapist. I help people. I'd use the term, they who are not wanting to live a gay life and want to become straight. And what? I thought they're born that way. I said, oh, no, 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 no. That's not what the science says. Oh, and by the way, I came out of homosexuality too, maybe. I don't know. I didn't say it all the time. I had to feel the situation. But at the post office, at the bank, I share it everywhere. Everybody in the community back a while ago, they knew. I said, oh, my first book, this was years ago. Oh, you want to get a copy of my book? And so I would take any opportunity I had to share it. And you just have to be wise. Like, why are you doing it? You have to have a good reason, and you're not going to win people over to your perspective. If that's your objective, don't do it. So I would do it if you need support, if you need help, and say, and well, I've my journey. And, in the Being Gay book, it talks about how to, Nicolosi Sr. developed a protocol, and then I developed it a little more, of how to share about your SSA with someone. And SSA is not about SSA. And so you go into the background and find out about his or her background. So don't try to win anyone over. Just get the support and love you need in your circle. And yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. And uh, uh, to say that Richard is at 70, he's still here, he's still doing this work
Crazy.
is well, for me, it's inspirational that you despite all of that negativity and all of that, because the truth does not need something, it doesn't need support. Truth will always come out,
Yeah.
and
And don't take
people.
any of it, and don't take any of it personal. And don't take any of it
Absolutely.
personal. People say, "Oh, Ali, you're so great." People say, "Ali, you suck. You're terrible." It's all about them. You know who you are with God and inside your soul and with your close people. That's good enough. Don't look for anyone else to approve of you or to affirm you, except people in your close circle. But know yourself, and all that other stuff is pew, pew, pew. Don't let it stick. Yeah.
Absolutely, couldn't have said it better myself. Well, I from all of us at Strong Support, I really want to extend gratitude, taking time on this early Saturday morning, where I'm sure you could be doing other things, to spend time here. And again, very grateful for your work. Lots of God's blessings to you, and um, as I say, if we can help in any terms with Turkey or Turkish or whatever, if there's anything we can do to help, then please let us know. And uh,
Everybody who's a praying person, please pray God will guide me now to, in the next week, I'm going away right after this to write. So for this book for therapists and counselors working with the SSA population, I appreciate your prayers that the inspiration and the right things will come.
amen. Amen.
I
Absolutely.
mean, shukran, shukran.
Shukran. Yes, beautiful. Yes, no, we pray that the work is successful. And thank you so much for giving your time. And hopefully we will keep in touch and
Of course.
see you soon. Thank you. God bless.
And you as well. Everyone, love you.